Good morning. It is Monday, June 3rd, 2024. I'm Thomas Caldwell of the Aurelian Column, and this is the Monday Morning Report. Well, the big story has been for the last week the Trump verdict. Now, that shouldn't have been surprising, given the deep state, the powers that be, whatever you want to call them, are doing everything in their power to keep that man from becoming the 47th President of the United States. And New York being the sort of town it is, et cetera, et cetera. The thing that was surprising is that he was found guilty on all counts. That's over the top even for leftist Marxist America. I'm not going to go into what a major travesty this whole thing has been. That's not lost on anybody. There were some people comparing May 30th to a day in infamy, which I don't really think is the case, at least not yet. That's not a good comparison to Pearl Harbor, but I do believe that if there is going to be a day of infamy out of this, it will be July 11th. That's the day the man is going to be sentenced. And that could turn into a very bad day, not only for Trump, but for the United States as a whole. It's not been a good thing, and in keeping with a pattern, everybody in power seems to be wanting to destroy the country at every level. Remember, Gerald Ford, to his credit, pardoned Richard Nixon back in the 1970s because he didn't want to see the country go through basically what we're seeing right now. It would be considered too detrimental. The 1960 election, by many accounts, was thrown in favor of Kennedy. That was done in Illinois by Richard Daley. There's a long story there. It's never been conclusively proven, but there's a lot of circumstantial evidence. Richard Nixon was urged to make a big deal out of it at the time, but he thought it would be bad for the country. And we are well past the age of statesmen acting like statesmen. The fact that the sentence will be handed down just before the Republican National Convention has not been lost on anyone, both those for and against Trump. It's amazing how some people are just crowing over, wow, we're going to keep this guy out of the White House any way we can. They don't realize that they're destroying the country that, well, they live off of. We're going to see how this goes. Everyone's been making predictions and what have you, but it is what it is. In reality, the damage has already been done, as the American legal system has been shredded of all pretenses of fair play and justice. Ladies and gentlemen, the bad guy's mask is off, and it has been off for some time. Trump's press conference afterwards wasn't really a press conference. He didn't take any questions. It was just a off-the-cuff rambling about how messed up and how unfair the whole thing is. He did look pretty frightened. Usually you didn't see that in Trump. But he did say one thing that is irrefutable. And that is, if they can do that to me, they can do that to anybody. And I don't think anyone's going to argue with that one. I would also recommend anyone interested in the true motivation behind the prosecution of the 45th President of the United States to just watch the press conference of the prosecutor in that case. That was done shortly after. The New York City prosecutor, I won't say any more. Listen to what he says and look at his body language. You can find this up in the usual places like YouTube, BitChute, and such. But just look at what he moves like and when he talks, and you will learn much. It doesn't leave anything to the imagination as to what the motivation is here. The guy's also running for public office, which is why I'm not mentioning his name. Meanwhile, the invasion of the United States continues unabated. Still an open border, people flooding in, crime going through the ceiling in some places, including here in Northern Virginia, where there's many congregations of people that have come in from all over the world and don't have any skills, have probably criminal records, and in many cases don't know how to drive cars, as we can see from some of the traffic incidents that have been popping up around the United States. The Biden administration is now being reported to be quietly dismissing the cases the asylum cases of 350,000 people. About that. So-called asylum cases. They're really not. I think most people have figured that out by now. Everything the Biden administration does seems to be of detriment to the United States and its people. I have not seen one good thing they've done, really. I'd love someone to point some of these things out. I can't find a good thing that they've done that doesn't have some nefarious purpose behind it. In other news, freedom of speech is under attack everywhere in the United States and around the world, really. Alex Jones, who is not one of my favorite people, I don't really like the man's style or in some cases what he reports, but he's been on the air in the last couple of days screaming that the feds are about to shut him down. This is not the FBI coming in the front door. This is most likely federal bankruptcy coming from that case in Connecticut at Sandy Hook, where he lost a massive libel case there and slander case, I believe it was, to the tune of about $1 billion, which very few people have the money to pay, and they're using that to shut him down. But that was lawfare as well, if you really look at that case a little bit. There's another one of a boy who graduated high school. Now a man because he's 18, I imagine, but a student who graduated high school in Kentucky, and he mentioned Jesus in his graduation address. Apparently he was the valedictorian or something like that. And he mentioned Jesus, and he had to apologize before they would give him his diploma. It's amazing. Diplomas are also being withheld in other places for pro-Palestinian actions, for remarks that are in the wrong place at the wrong time or the wrong sort of action, namely at universities. And there's a lot of reports of that. Whether they can withhold those permanently, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if you've spent 4 years or more at a university and done your work, and then you went out and made a ruckus over something or said something someone didn't like, to completely cancel that is, again, everything goes crazier and crazier, and when you think you've reached a limit, it goes even further. Also, people are being fired for such things. In New York, a Palestinian-born nurse who was receiving an award from her employer for humanitarianism and mercy was promptly fired by said employer for condemning what was going on in Gaza. Oh, the humanity. Again, sometimes there's no words for this, and I just have to let the words speak for themselves, or the situations speak for themselves. There was some bad reporting done in a few places about the USS Eisenhower, the aircraft carrier in the Red Sea. It was supposedly sunk or hit or attacked, depending on who you were reading, by the Houthis of Yemen, right at the ones that are causing so much trouble getting into the Suez Canal from the Indian Ocean. Some reports that it was hit and sunk. That's apparently not true. I think it's pretty hard to hide a sunken aircraft carrier. Be careful what you hear and see on the internet, people. This is a war of information, as are most wars, and the bad guys really are in charge. They really do have all the stuff going on, and when stories like that get leaked, it's often to discredit the people who are reporting the leaks. So until you actually see it from several sources or from a very reliable source, don't believe it. Take it from an old newsman on that one. In other news, Ukraine and more NATO weapons being added into the mix. This will include American-built fighter planes and some other stuff going on. It seems that the U.S. and NATO are doing everything they can to goad the Russian bear into direct conflict. Why would they do that? At one time, the United States was a peacemaker, or at least it tried to be. The Russo-Japanese War at the beginning of the 20th century was was brokered to an end by Theodore Roosevelt, the president. He actually got the two sides together and got them to see reason and got them to sign a peace treaty. And he got the Nobel Prize for it. I guess it doesn't pay that much to make peace these days, only to build weapons, but one can hope. The election for the next president is only a little more than 150 days away from today. That's going to be a real important date. Now, every year that there's an election, people say it's the most important election in American history, but this year I think it's true. And that's not hyperbole. I really think it's true. Because they're doing everything they can to put Trump in prison, where his diet and his exercise and his mental state could be manipulated. And if you've ever met anyone who's been in prison or been in solitary confinement, you know how that can really mess you up. The thing is, they're going to do everything they can to stop him. Trump, remember, is not the whole game. He's merely the head of this massive populist movement in the United States of hundreds of millions of people who are sick and tired of what's going on and has been going on for some time. And the people who are in power are going to do everything they can to grab onto it. They're scared. This is why this is so overt and so over the top. They are very scared that they're going to lose control. And if you've spent time in the countryside, as I do when I can, meeting people and finding out how they feel, it's very different from in the cities. It's a whole different way of thinking. I mean, Trump was found guilty. There's literally tens, if not hundreds of millions of people that are offended with that. But the backers of Trump did not go into the cities or into the towns and set fire to them, loot, cause all sorts of vandalism, kill people, start fires, all that other nasty stuff, which seems to happen when the other side loses a court case. No, what they did is they raised money. I believe at last count it was more than $50 million in 24 hours, 48 hours after Trump was found guilty that his campaign was able to raise. Probably a lot more since then. No, there's also a lot of grassroots work going on in the United States to get people registered to vote in places they traditionally haven't. And these are people who would probably be voting for Trump. I'm not going to say where or how this is being done because I don't want to see it interfered with. But I do know from firsthand sources that it is being conducted. There's a lot of people registering to vote, and it will be an interesting time in November for sure. But realistically, people, this is the most important election that I can think of in, I don't know, a very long time, possibly since the election of 1860, when Lincoln was carried into office without the aid of the South. So we're going to be very, very active this summer. I'm going to try to be more. But I want you to really pay attention to what's going on, but be very careful what your information sources are. Again, if you're watching television these days, if you are spending time seeing the talking heads, and that's really all they are, there's not much in between the ears, you're really wasting your time. You really have to dig up your own information. There are alternative media sources. Some of them are good, some of them are not. But you have to really go out of your way to find the truth this summer. Now, something new I'm going to be adding, and I will be recommending books here on a regular basis, and mostly because reading is the only way to learn anything well pertaining to the mind. If you want to learn a martial art, you got to go to the dojo and do the time with your body and your teacher. But if you're going to be learning anything, I mean just learning things at an intellectual level, books are still the best way to do it. Not videos on YouTube, not listening to somebody who says he read something, but to read it for yourself, whether it's a book you like or a book you don't like, whether it's somebody you like or somebody you don't like. I have, over the years, because I was trained early in journalism, is to be able to read information from people I don't necessarily agree with. In some cases, I really don't like in any way, shape, or form. but you have to be able to get to the truth yourself, and the best, quickest, and easiest way to do that is to read, and you're not going to replace books, whether they be electronic, audio, or the good old-fashioned paper. Now, here's 2 books for you. One is I just finished reading, and it's excellent. It's called The Unprotected Class: How Anti-White Racism is Tearing America Apart. And that was written by Jeremy Carl. He was a cabinet official, an undersecretary of, I believe it was the Interior Department under the Trump administration. And this is a book that needed to be written really timely because anti-white racism is a terrible problem in this country. It is evil. It is causing all sorts of problems, especially for people who are white. And a lot of people like to say it's not true. It is very true. It is there. It is real. And he did a brilliant job of laying it all out, putting out different cases, saying what needed to be said. And a lot of people in the mainstream media won't even admit this. But this is a serious problem. The unprotected class: how white people are being really victimized in this country unjustly, and why it's leading to so much social turmoil now everywhere. Whatever your ethnic background, be it from Europe, from Africa, from Asia, from South Asia, from the Far East, whatever, read this book. Remember, one of the reasons the Kennedys were so anti-bigotry back in the day was because, as Irish, they knew what it was like to be treated like dirt because of who they were. If you are a decent human being, you'll want to get this book and read it. Now, there's another one coming out, and I love the title, and I did see a couple of interviews with some of the authors. There's a few authors on this one. It's called Unhumans: The Secret History of Communist Revolutions and How to Crush Them. This is a book that's coming out on July the 2nd. I've pre-ordered it myself. The authors are a man named Jack Posobiec and Joshua Lasik and some other people. It looks quite promising. These are definite pro-Trump people. They've been very active since the 45th president was starting to run for office. I do love that title because it really describes the people who are in charge right now. It does describe the Marxist, liberal, communist attitude that has really grown like a cancer on American society. And Unhumans is pretty much what we're dealing with. They don't deserve the title Inhuman. Unhumans, that's a great title. And I look forward to reading it. It'll be out beginning of next month. Now, speaking of Unhumans, a couple of people have been dropping me notes. Whatever happened to the aliens being talked about in front of Congress last year? Do you remember that? I believe it was last summer they had some people that went off and testified in front of a special House committee on interactions with extraterrestrials, took the oath and everything. And that was very big at the time, and then it just petered out into nothing. And I think that is, well, you don't know what to make of it, because I thought they were going to start turning that into some sort of distraction. But I guess somebody somewhere decided that it wasn't a good idea to do that, and they went back to ignoring that topic. It kind of makes you wonder what's going on in the world right now, doesn't it? And why it's happening. Because Clown World is very real. I can't come up with an explanation based on rationality, but again, Occam's razor, what explanation makes the most sense? Now, back around that time, about a year ago, I did write a story that's up on my Substack channel based on some things I learned back in the 1990s. And I did get an awful lot of feedback at the time, but maybe it needs to be revisited because it could explain why everything is so nuts. And I'll leave it up to the reader to judge for themselves. It's up on my Substack channel. It's called UFOs, Mars, and the End of the Cold War. And it's based on some things I was told at the time by some very interesting people. And I did take an objective view of what I was reporting, but just look that up on my Substack channel. Check it out. It's one of my more popular stories. It got a lot of reads since then. It's called UFOs, Mars, and the End of the Cold War. It came out in June of about a year ago, 2023. Again, use your own version of Occam's razor, and Occam's razor is explained in that story. That's it for today. If you like what you hear, please like and subscribe. Please consider a paid subscription. It will help a great deal. I do want to do this more if I can. Consider also sending me some information if you find anything interesting. I can be reached at a couple of places. The best place is the email address feedback@aureliancolumn.com, feedback@aureliancolumn.com. I'm up on X, formerly known as Twitter, and my handle there is MICCAMPEN. That's MICCAMPEN. I'm also up on Telegram. The handle there is, of course, the Aurelian Column. I do post things there. That's turning out to be a very interesting place to get alternative news. And, of course, you can find me at Substack, aureliancolumn.substack.com, which is probably why you're hearing this. I'm up on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and a few other places. That's it. Be good, be safe, be vigilant, and good day.